your cell phones during the meeting and engage in conversation outside the chambers. And Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes. Councilmember Patton,
Here.
Councilmember Bragg,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs,
Here.
Mayor Dedina,
Here.
Councilmember Bilbray is absent.
And then I'd like to call up Fernanda Feliz from Nicholas School, who will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And then also want to thank her family for being here, her parents and her brother and all her family. And then Principal Rigo Lara from Nicholas School. And then just hold on a minute, Fernanda, so I can talk about you. I have a nice paragraph. According to her teacher, Fernanda is an enthusiastic, hardworking student. Her favorite subject is math. She loves working with numbers and solving for mathematical problems. She recently developed an interest in soccer and is waiting to soon be registered into a soccer team. Another interesting fact about Fernanda's family, and one that Fernanda was very proud of, his father is a cancer survivor. And last school year, her father underwent chemotherapy, and now he's cancer-free. So Fernanda's very happy to see her dad back. So you can start now if you'd like.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you all of Fernanda's team for coming. We really appreciate it. And no one has to feel obligated to stay. Are there any agenda changes? Great. Okay.
This is a consent item that had a $50,000 item in the warrant registry that had miscellaneous next to it. And I have discovered what that item was for. I can mention it briefly, and I don't have to ask for it to be pulled if that's permissible to, okay. Apparently the item was for the final payment to Habitat for Humanity for their wonderful project on 10th and Palm. It just happened to be, that detail happened to be in the second line, which wasn't in the warrant registry disclosure. So I appreciate it very much for Doug for filling me in on that when I called this afternoon.
Great, thank you. And then we start with council updates and information presentations. We're starting with Councilmember Patton.
Yes, thank you. I went to the South County EDC meeting as the rep. Nothing to report back there. I also went to the opening of Seaside Candy, reopening, and you have to check it out. They have a whole new environment in there, as well as candy, if you like candy. Kiwanis Fishing Derby was last weekend, and I was able to participate. I worked on the pier for about 4 hours, baiting hooks and tying lines and untangling. And I had a great time watching kids catch their first fish. That was awesome. I want to thank Kiwanis, as well as the Port of San Diego that also contributed to that. And then finally, last night, had a lengthy, Councilmember Spriggs and I are on the night before last, sorry, last night was something else. Night before last, we're on the ad hoc committee for zoning, and we met for about a little over 2 hours, and we've narrowed down some issues on zoning regulations that will affect our whole city in a positive way. Thank you.
Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. As a representative to the Metropolitan Transit System and also the Sandag Transportation Committee, both of those entities are dark for the month of August, so I had no meetings to attend or report on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Spriggs.
Well, Councilmember Patton stole my thunder because I was going to also report on that, but it was, I think, a very good turnout from the community members who are interested in some of the zoning issues that have surfaced as kind of loopholes in what the community intended in the commercial zoning areas, particularly projects that have been proposed along Seacoast Drive that are exclusively residential, but benefiting from being in the commercial mixed-use zone, as well as a project that we turned down along just off of Palm Avenue earlier. So we are working with the citizens of Imperial Beach on this ad hoc zoning committee to correct some of those what we consider to be loopholes and make some other adjustments that will be for the benefit of the community. And our expectation is that we will have a full city council meeting with a full report on that within the next month or so. So that's all I have to report on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I want to, we have news about our Imperial Beach Firefighting Department. Last night, Imperial Beach Engine 239, 4 members of that team responded as part of the Metro Zone strike team to the Blue Cut Fire in San Bernardino County. The strike team also consists of engines from San Diego, Chula Vista, National City, and a battalion chief from Coronado. The Blue Cut Fire this morning was listed as 30,000 acres and 0% contained. Over 80,000 people have been ordered to evacuate. Red flag conditions are in effect till Thursday at 9 p.m. and all expenses are reimbursed through federal and state emergency funds. So we want to thank our firefighters for responding to such an important need, and really appreciate them being out there and having such a professional fire department. It works collaboratively throughout San Diego and Southern California. Today I was able to take the new consul of Mexico in San Diego, along with city manager Andy Hall and 2 of her staff members, on a tour of the Tijuana River Valley and actually Imperial Beach. The tour was really to talk about specifically issues related to water quality problems that we have. It was a great tour for her to see what a great city Imperial Beach is and why water quality issues are such a significant impact to public health and then our economic well-being. And so we toured the beachfront, south end of the Seacoast Drive, and then went down to 3 locations in the Tijuana River Valley, the actual concrete channel right near the U.S.-Mexico border, Goat Canyon, and then actually out at Borderfield State Park right on Monument Mesa. So that was a good trip. We really emphasized that while we need to collaboratively work together, it was interesting to see that Imperial Beach is, out of all the state, federal, international agencies and local agencies, is the one pushing the hardest to resolve this issue, something that they are recognizing and asking about at very high levels in Mexico. So I want to shout out to also Chris Helmer, our Public Works Department. Raise your hand, Chris. We have a very, very smart, actively engaged person who works on water quality. It's really important to have people that actually know what they're talking about. That helps us to be in the driver's seat when we're talking about solutions. So we're not pointing fingers. We're talking about, here are the specific tangible things that can be done to reduce contamination at our beach. And so that's been something that's been really positive. And so we look forward to working with the consul, but more importantly, everyone on both sides of the border to actually identify the technical solutions to this issue and then identify the funding to make it work. So anyway, so that's good. And then just in my own time, I competed for the state of California lifeguarding team in the National Lifeguard Championships this weekend in Hermosa Beach. But and then a month earlier in the state lifeguarding championships in Huntington Beach. But next year in 2017, the city of Imperial Beach, the city of Coronado, is working with the state of California at Silver Strand State Beach to host the California Lifeguard Championships. It'll be the end of July. So Imperial Beach will have its own team. Is that right, Captain Stabenow? As I understand, there'll be at least 12 guys, 12 men and women on the IB team at the state championships. Right. So anyway, so they're all really excited about that. It was really nice to have everybody at the National Lifeguard Championships ask me about next year's championship and really being excited about coming down here. So that'll be a really nice thing, and nice to see our lifeguards taking leadership on that. So really appreciated that. Thanks, Captain Stabenow, for having such a great lifeguard service. And I think that's about it. Communications from city staff.
I had one that
Oh,
I
okay.
forgot to add, Mayor, that you reminded me of with your comments. On September 1st, the International Boundary and Water Commission Citizens Forum, of which I'm a board member, in fact, co-chair, is having their meeting over in the estuary conference room at 6:30. They usually run from 6:30 to 8:30, and there are some very germane topics. 2 of the agenda items are going to be the Scripps Institution of Oceanography's DIE study, where they've studied the currents between Mexico and Imperial Beach and what the implications of those currents are for our water quality. A preliminary version of this was at a presentation that the mayor presided over over in the Dempsey Holder Center that he spoke about, I think, 2 weeks ago. The second aspect is going to be Surfrider Foundation's River Valley, River Basin tour on the Tijuana side, which was about a month and a half, 2 months ago. I happened to be on that, but they are going to make a presentation of their findings and observations from the watershed on the Tijuana side and the challenges that the habitation of that watershed on the Tijuana side presents to water quality on our side of the border. So September 1, 6:30 in the estuary meeting room. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Now we have some public comments. Josie Hamada.
Good evening. There are 4 different things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to thank the Public Works for putting on the garbage can at the People's Park, because that has really helped a lot in the litter. But I'm thinking that since that's being looked at, that it would be good if we could add another one, because on Mondays I see that garbage can filled to the hilt, because I know a lot of people are now using our beach, and I'm just thinking of how we can, help that. Secondly, is I want to also thank the Public Works, because last week or the week before, they put in a poop bag on there and that empty lot. And I'm sorry, I'm a walker, so people just need to know I'm just observant about walking. But that bag has really helped a lot, because now you're having people coming in from all over, and a lot of people have their dogs with them and stuff, but they don't think about bringing their own poop bags. I'm sorry, but that's just that. And so I'm just thinking it would be really nice if we had those bags at a place at the different parks. So that will also help the people who have not been as conscious of picking up after their dogs, that to know that we are a friendly city, but we really care about our environment. And lastly, somebody brought up that previously, I know Mr. Hall had talked about putting in portable potties, because there's nothing down to the Boca Rio, and so people have asked me, when I'm talking, is that how come but there aren't any down in that area? And I know you have talked about that, but those are just things that I'm just seeing as how we can make Imperial Beach a better friendly town for our visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamada, for that very focused presentation. Now we have Stephen Wright from Four Walls International.
Hello, everybody, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm here very excited just to announce that we are beginning with the leadership of a local steering committee. We are beginning our community engagement process for the reimagination of the lot on Seacoast, the La Soy property, and just wanted to bring some flyers, make sure you all receive them, and we hope to see you there. I know it's short notice, but thank you very much.
And did you have flyers to hand out?
I do.
Okay, you can hand them to the city clerk and we can pass them out. Thank you. Great. Okay, now we have item 1.1. Did we have any more speaker slips, by the way? Oh, for 1.1, okay. And that's the Welcoming Cities Proclamation. And just, there's a last minute agenda information for the regular city council meeting. And we had letters of support for the Anti-Defamation League, the Alliance San Diego, International Rescue Committee, San Diego Immigrants' Right Consortium, SEIU Local 221 that represents our employees here at City Hall, Survivors of Torture International, Interfaith Center for Worker Justice of San Diego County. And then we have, before I read it, we have some speakers who would like to speak, I'm assuming, so I'll read the cards. And first we have Pedro Rios from the American Friends Service Committee.
Good afternoon. And if it's okay, I'm going to ask my colleagues to also join me. That way, I think it'll be easier.
Oh, okay.
So thank you, Mayor Dedina and distinguished council members and city staff. My name is Pedro Rios. I'm the director of the American Friends Service Committee, which is a human rights organization that has worked in San Diego for nearly 40 years. We work on immigration, on refugee, and on border issues. And I'd like to begin by saying that this is definitely a step forward. I certainly do commend you, Mayor, and city staff for recognizing that Imperial Beach should be a welcoming city. I grew up in the South Bay. I remember the days from long ago when uh, there were what we call the skinhead surfers, used to pick fights with some of the kids from my neighborhood. I grew up in the Del Sol area, and so Imperial Beach was also part of my community. And so I recognize that in this time period when we hear negative comments from people seeking public office, that when a city decides to take the step forward and declare itself, proclaim itself a welcoming city, it really does recognize that every single human being in that city is of value, that every single human being contributes in myriad ways that perhaps we might not even be aware of. But it offers also an opportunity for those individuals to step forward and to say, this is what I can do to make my community a better place for everyone. So I commend you, Mayor. I commend the city for taking this step forward. And it certainly does represent, I believe, what many cities around the county, around the state, and around the county have been doing to ameliorate and to create communities of peace and really do welcome those individuals that are finding themselves in difficult situations in different parts of the world. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Now we have Megan Afshin from the International Rescue Committee.
Thank you so much, Mayor Dedina and respected council members. And today is such an important day. There are so many people affected by this type of proclamation. We have families that are being resettled here in Imperial Beach. One of which is a beautiful family that came from Afghanistan. And after working with refugees for 2 years, I saw some of the most amazing citizenship happening right here in Imperial Beach, because as serving with the American military, there was an Afghan soldier that came and resettled here in Imperial Beach. And the American soldier he was working with over those 10 years, helped him to resettle here in Imperial Beach, get him a job as a plumber, and applied for his plumber status. And they have an amazing life. And within a year, were able to resettle themselves. And so I don't think that would have been possible if they weren't welcomed and that welcome wasn't as warm as it was. So thank you so much for taking this stance and showing the rest of our communities what it means to be a welcoming city.
All right, thank you. I have David Garcia from SEIU. Welcome back, David.
So my name is David Garcias. I'm the president of SEIU Local 221, representing about 14,000 public employees here in San Diego and Imperial counties. I'm also lucky to be the vice president of the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council. And I just want to say, SEIU would like to really commend you, Mayor Dedina, and the council for your leadership and commitment on this, and making the city of IB, a community of all residents feeling welcome and having the opportunity to thrive and really claim Imperial Beach as their home, and a home of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Service Employees International Union believes in a society that values the contributions of aspiring citizens and recognizes the integral role that new Americans play in our past, our present, and our future. Immigrant, refugees, and exiles have a long and rich history in this country, and immigrants, refugees, and exiles grow businesses, strengthen the economy, create jobs, and serve as leaders in our churches, our organizations, our schools, and our community venues. Unfortunately, over the last few years, we have heard an increase in hateful rhetoric and from public figures directed towards the immigrant population. And I would just like to say such incidents are creating fear in our communities and further isolating immigrants and refugees. By proclaiming Imperial Beach a welcoming city, it sends a strong message to the residents and that contributions of immigrants and refugee communities are important to all, and that all residents, regardless of where they come from, are valued and welcomed in the city of Imperial Beach. We appreciate your commitment to ensuring that all residents feel welcome and look forward to working further with you and the city of Imperial Beach. And, you know, as a personal note, as the former code enforcement officer, but also representing the public employees, this is a real proud moment that you've taken this step. Thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you.
We have Laura Moreno from the United here. Did you want to speak or?
I can just say who I am.
Oh, okay.
I'm here in support. My name's Laura Moreno, and I am the immigration coordinator for Unite Here Local 30, and we represent hospitality workers, housekeepers, housemen, cooks, you know, different parts of the people that work in the hotels, and we're very, very proud of Imperial Beach to taking this step forward. As it was mentioned, there's a lot of people that are in fear just because of the rhetoric, even though there's been people that have been in Imperial Beach or, you know, other parts of the county for a very long time and have been residents. But, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like this is a very great step forward for them. They're going to feel a lot more welcomed as well. And with the workers that I work with, I help them become citizens, US citizens. A lot of members that have been residents for 20 plus years and didn't know how to become US citizens. And a lot of them live here in Imperial Beach. So thank you very much for your time and thank you for what you're doing.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And then we have Aaron Sudamoto. Sudamoto, did you want to speak? Oh, did you? Okay, and then, I'm sorry, Ginger Jacobs from San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium. Did you want to speak?
So I'm accepting.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll do the proclamation then. Okay. So, did anyone, the council members want to say anything or you guys? Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say that, you know, this is a proud moment for us, for the community, and we want people here who have lived here for a long time, people who are moving here to call Imperial Beach home. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, this is home.
Great, thank you. Mr. Spriggs?
And this, this proclamation, I think, speaks for all of us who are open-minded and love Imperial Beach as a diverse, friendly, wonderful community. I'm very proud to be an elected representative of this community.
So this means a lot to me. My dad came to this country in 1939 as a refugee, escaping the Nazi occupation of Europe. My mom was bombed by the Germans and ended up coming to America. She married my dad, but was a refugee in her own country, had to leave London and go so she wouldn't get bombed. And so I have this image of my dad talking about coming to America. And I have a special relationship with the beach because my dad spent his childhood on the beach in New York and learned how to play baseball. And I was thinking about that today because I'm taking Steve Lopez of the Los Angeles Times, a columnist, to our beach tomorrow. And one of the things I talked to him about was the fact that I was at Huntington Beach recently for the state lifeguard thing. And what I saw in Huntington Beach in Orange County was that our beach has become the Ellis Island and the town square of America. And if you look at beaches now, especially our beach, they are places where people express themselves with joy. And more important, they come together regardless of race, religion, background, class, ethnicity, whatever differences, and have a beautiful time with their families. And you can see that in kids who find each other immediately and play together. And I saw that in Orange County, and I saw that today on our own beach. And it's something I'm immensely proud of, the fact that we have this amazingly hospitable beach where people come and have literally the best days of their life, regardless of what they're wearing or who they are. It's really, really great. So it really means a lot to me. And I'm really proud of the fact that we are a welcoming city. We have wonderful council members, a wonderfully diverse city staff, and we pride ourselves in this city of being very friendly. So anyway, it's really, really great. So anyway, I'll read this proclamation. Imperial Beach is a welcoming community for immigrants, refugees, and asylees. We are a vibrant and thriving community with significant racial, religious, and ethnic diversity. According to the U.S. Census, we are home to nearly 5,400 immigrants, refugees, and asylees, who represents nearly 1 of every 5 of the city's residents, and approximately 47% of all households speak another language in addition to English at home. Whereas immigrants, refugees, and asylees contribute to the economic, social, and cultural well-being of the city, and we are witnessing the largest refugee crisis since the Cold War, with more than 60 million refugees worldwide. And the city of IB is committed to recognizing the diversity and the diverse contributions of both immigrants and native-born residents. And as mayor of Imperial Beach, along with my city council, I recognize that all people are deserving of assurance of the basic principles of equality and human rights. So therefore, be it reclaimed that the city of Imperial Beach affirms our commitment to doing our part to make the United States a welcoming environment for immigrants, refugees, and asylees, and declares Imperial Beach to be a welcoming city. On that note, I was thinking about it, and Mr. Patton, I'm sure you had the same experience growing up. It's a little east of here. The kids I was friends with had parents who were from El Salvador, Japan, Korea, Philippines, Mexico, and Germany. That's just what I remember off the top of my head. So I'm sure you had the same
You know,
experience growing up in just
it's,
east
it's
of
pretty
here.
indicative of what's going on in our school systems right now. From elementary school to middle school to high school, we have this melting pot, and it's the kids. They get it. The kids get it. We have to make sure they get it. And then we want to make sure all the adults get it. That this is the right way to go. So thank you.
All right, so we'll present the proclamation. Anybody else wants to come up and do this? That'd be great. Yeah.
All right, you guys, on the count of 3, 1, 2. Okay. Any more?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Mayor Dedita and City Council members, let me tell you a little bit about the organization that is accepting the proclamation. I'm the chair of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. We were founded about 10 years ago, and we're a county-wide organization that brings together over 35 different individual organizations from the faith-based communities, everybody from the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, to Catholic Charities, to the Interfaith Committee for Worker Justice. We represent unions, community organizations, and some very even tiny neighborhood human rights organizations that have just formed together at a grassroots level, student organizations, legal services organizations, and lawyers all coming together to work to further immigrants' rights as human rights. And we proudly accept the proclamation. We thank you guys very much for making it. I was thinking when you were talking about your own heritage and childhood experience, Mayor, that I actually grew up in the middle of the country in rural Indiana, and it was not a very welcoming city. It was, one of those cities that had been a hotbed of Klan activity, and everybody sort of knew that if you were a person of color, you didn't live in my town, you lived in the next town over, just because of that history and that tradition. Now living in San Diego County, my daughter, who's 8 years old, goes to a wonderful public, diverse elementary school. Her friends, their family backgrounds are from literally all over the world, everywhere from Mexico and Guatemala to Eritrea, Ethiopia, and beyond. And so it's a privilege to live in a county and to be a part of a community like this that truly sees the value in diversity, welcomes immigrants, recognizes their contributions. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thanks for everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. Okay, now we have another presentation from the Institute of Public Strategies regarding deemed approval alcohol establishments. And Richard Pruce from the project manager for Institute for Public Strategies will give the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I really appreciate the time and opportunity to come and present to you today. Oh, that's too small for me to read. I'm gonna have to be looking up every so often. First, we're with South Bay Community Change Project, which is a project of the Institute for Public Strategies. And we're funded by the County Health and Human Services Administration to do work around alcohol and other drugs. Well, we're not prohibitionists, but we believe in reducing harm and definitely taking the risk out of youth access to alcohol. We don't want to see alcohol getting into our youth. Today, we're going to be talking about crime stemming from alcohol outlets, vendors' responsibilities, the cost of alcohol to society, and that's the abuse of alcohol to society, and local policy solutions in the deemed approved ordinance. Alcohol establishments that are run poorly or not operated by best business practices can attract crime to the community and around them. Crimes like robbery, assault, driving under the influence for the on-sale places, public intoxication, aggressive panhandling, just community nuisances and the type of crimes that you don't want to have, especially in your beach areas. The vendor responsibility. Sales to underage or intoxicated persons occur in 1/2 to 3/4 of all retail alcohol outlets. Imperial Beach, the Sheriff's Department, and our organization have done minor decoy operations where they've gone to some of the places to see if they'd sell alcohol, and some have. Not a large number, but they do sell alcohol. They are willing to sell alcohol to minors. And then 50% of drivers being cited for driving under the influence got their alcohol from bars or off-sale establishments. And sales of high-risk products can really do harm to the community. And by high risk, I mean like the 40 ounces with high alcohol content, the little bottles you see in places that people come in, buy, and then go right outside and drink. And those are the kind of things you see happening around the beaches areas. The cost in California for alcohol harms is $35 billion. And a portion that's paid by our tax money, your and my tax money, is 43%, which works out to about $388 per person in the state. In the county of San Diego, we have $3 billion is the cost for alcohol abuse and harms. 1,352,000 is lost wages. 1,352,000,000 is lost wages. Over 500 million is to household labor or lost household works. Medical expenses, 669 million, and then other things, which property damage, impaired driving, driving under the influence, and then public services, our police and fire are huge costs to our communities, in excess of $115 million. As you are aware, alcohol licensing is done by the state, the alcohol beverage control, and they have control over issues of alcohol licenses. In San Diego County, there's over 6,772 alcohol licenses issued just for San Diego County. The regulatory authority, again, is ABC, and the San Diego Office for the Alcohol Beverage Control, ABC, has 4 enforcement officers. They don't have the time or the resources to worry about all of the establishments when they're also working on issuing licenses. And so it becomes necessary for local communities to try and take some local authority and local control over what's happening in their communities around alcohol establishments. That's where, excuse me, that's where deemed approved ordinances and conditional use permits come into play, which they create an opportunity for local control of alcohol retail outlets to reduce criminal activity and public nuisance. Municipalities can have a positive impact on reducing crime around alcohol outlets through the use of conditional use permits. And as you know, with your conditional use permits, you can set standards or guidelines and regulations for alcohol outlets operation. Example, you can set business hours, control business hours. You can set some product limitations. If some of these harmful products you don't want to see in your community, you can set those limitations under conditional use permits so they're not allowed to be sold. The problem is businesses have been around for a long time. Before you had a conditional use process, don't have any of those performance standards or restrictions to help them be good businesses in the community. And that's where a deemed approved ordinance comes into play. Wow, that's small print, huh? The land use authority, I'll read just a little bit of it. The land use authority gives the city the means to establish conditional use permits to impose regulation and performance standards on alcohol retail outlets, like we just discussed, including distance from sensitive places like schools, parks, excuse me. You can restrict the size, operation hours, and you can set guidelines for signage. The state has guidelines for signage, but you can even have more stringent guidelines. And signage can affect what type of criminal activity happens around the business. And again, CUPs apply to new alcohol outlets only. Deemed approved ordinance side will have an effect on the businesses that were opened prior to when you had a conditional use permit process. And kind of what it does is it takes the grandfathered businesses, which are non-conforming land uses is what they're classified as. And when a business is classified as a non-conforming land use, the city has really no option for restricting what's going on with them or to try and bring them up to a higher standard of operation standard. The deemed approved ordinance changes their classification from a non-conforming land use to a deemed approved land use. And with the deemed approved land use, you can set performance standards. Some of those performance standards like you could with a conditional use permit. Of course, they have to pay state laws. They have to, you can put in there, they have to keep the property clean. They have to keep the people from hanging out, loitering, those kind of things. Here's an example of some of the things that you can regulate, like loitering. Product size you can limit under conditional use permit. Under deemed approved, you can limit the loitering, the keeping the property clean, and then complying with state law. And what happens is when a business then doesn't meet those performance standards, you can take away their deemed approved status so they can't sell alcohol anymore. They still have their state liquor license, but they can't sell alcohol in your city until they meet the performance standards. So the city has control over what those businesses are doing. So the whole idea isn't to get rid of businesses, it's to bring businesses up so it's a level playing field. So you have the good businesses that have CUPs, conditional use permits, and work with the city and have good business practices, don't sell to under 21s, keep the area clean, and then you have a couple others, right? What the deemed approved does is it gives you tools where you can bring those others up to a higher performance level and help make the city a better place for the residents and tourists and visitors, you know, especially when you get down to the beach area. And it also provides for helping with the RBSS, like the Sheriff's Department does now with Deputy Lori Bird. It can help strengthen that. And it continues with Lori Bird working with the Sheriff's Department and the city working with owners and management. And it can also hold a funding source to help pay for the officers or the deputies and the work they're doing, which now I think you guys are doing it through your general fund, which is awesome. but this could help offset that, so you could use your general fund for other uses in the city. El Cajon has deemed approved of the first one in San Diego County. And since they've had it in operation, excuse me, they've had 3 businesses. We'll just go through, show you pictures of them real quick, that violated their performance standards. All 3 businesses were held to task. All 3 businesses raised their level of standards and were able to get a new conditional use permit and are operating. Like I say, this is not made to get rid of businesses. It's made to improve their performance standards and level that playing field with all the businesses in town. In El Cajon, some of the results they've seen since they've initiated the ordinance, as you can see on public drunkenness, they had 526 arrests. And since they've initiated the ordinance between 2012 to 2014, they now average about 344, significant reduction. For public drinking, they've reduced it from 148 arrests to 109 arrests. What's most impressive to me, and I think really important, is they've reduced minors in possession from 29 arrests to 2. So they've had a huge impact on underage drinking and through the use of the deemed approved ordinance. The California League of Cities in 2011 at their annual convention said that cities have limited opportunities to control retail liquor outlets and liquor licensing and that, because it's a state controlled licensing process. But through their land use and policing powers, they can have a real positive effect. And the California League of Cities endorsed conditional use permits and deemed approved ordinances to empower cities to have that authority to make their cities a better community. And I tried to go through that real quick for you guys. So if there are any questions.
Questions or comments? Mr. Spriggs? Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. You know, we've been very concerned about this issue in Imperial Beach, and I think this provides us with some great information. And the El Cajon example and success story is, I think, is a very good thing to see, a concrete example of what difference it can make to have deemed approved. Are there some sample ordinances that we could look at
Most definitely.
that might be adapted to our conditions here in Imperial
There's,
Beach?
of course, the El Cajon ordinance. And Oakland has a strong ordinance. Ventura County has a strong ordinance. Fullerton has a strong ordinance. And we can ensure that you have copies of it.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. That's really all I had.
Mr. Patton?
Well, thanks for introducing the deemed approved ordinance. I think it's a great tool. And I, like you, I don't want to see any businesses closed.
Exactly.
But what does bug me is before we have Sun and Sea Festival or 4th of July or any big event in Imperial Beach, there are a couple stores that sell liquor, beer, mainly malt liquor. And if you happen to see their delivery before those big events, and there's cases of this malt liquor sitting outside their door to be loaded in, they're making a big profit out of that. And we as the city, we're paying the price.
Yeah.
We're paying it in public services, as you mentioned, safety, crime, quality of life. And to me, having some sort of tool like this to these single malt liquors, that go for $1.50 each or for 40, I don't know what they cost, but they're cheap and it's a cheap high. And I think we really need to kind of just somewhere down the road soon, look into some of these liquor stores that really bulk up before these big events, and they're getting the windfall and we're getting that end of the stick. So thanks for sharing. I think this is a good tool. Hopefully we use it.
Any other comments, Ms. Bragg?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. And
Oh, you're
you
most
and I have spoke before, and This is an issue that we all take seriously, that members of the community take seriously, but also that our restaurants and bars and liquor stores take seriously as well. I actually took one of the classes on the responsible beverage sales and service. There's a member in our audience who had almost every single one of their staff also attend that. And that is a valuable tool. And I think one of the things that this city can do is search for more grants for that, because those are the people who are at the front line and armed with knowledge and what to look for and how to approach somebody is really critical. And that final sale, perhaps, of maybe not making that sale and how to handle that very delicate issue. Of course, access for minors to have alcohol as we have all said, is really important to all of us. If this item were to come back to us, obviously, we have our lieutenant in the audience. There's a lot of data that I think would be necessary, that would have to be provided from our sheriff's department to state that, yes, there is an extreme problem in Imperial Beach. Colleagues, one of the things that we have to think about is, if you have this ordinance, do we have the manpower and the staff to enforce it? So that becomes an issue as well. And in closing my comments, I would just like to say that conditional use permits are valuable tools for us. And, in new operations, something that we can certainly look at. We had an opportunity recently, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities, because that's where we can really start to nip a problem in the bud by laying out the groundwork and saying, okay, as a community, as policymakers, this is what we expect and want. I really did appreciate your comments of saying that we'd like to raise the performance level of all of our businesses and not just ones that sell alcohol. But in defense of our businesses, especially the one here in the audience, I know they take this issue extremely to heart. It is critically important. And the ABC, yes, they don't come out here as often as we would like them to. I think that they may come out, in response times. They hear of a problem, so you can't really rely on them either. But again, I think it's going back to the staff members at these locations. That's where a lot of the problem could be curtailed. In just a bartender knowing, how to actually read a license, to do the math,
No, we have
and spot a fake,
I agree
or a
with you.
clerk.
Mm.
I used to manage to market, and I had a kid who'd only been on the job 2 days, and he sold to a youngster. So, did I train him properly? Maybe in the first 2 days, maybe I didn't. Could have done a better job, you know. So I think that a lot of the responsibility is back to the retailer. I really do appreciate you bringing this item forward. It is
Oh,
important to all of us.
Thank you very much, and thank you your support on our youth activities and our forum. Really
I
appreciate
enjoyed that. I enjoyed,
That's
he was
awesome.
referring to something at Mar Vista where I was a speaker, and the students at Mar Vista High School took this item to be, they took it so seriously. I was speaking with them before graduation, and they were talking about, and we all see it in the newspaper, we all see it on television, lives are lost. It was actually the social host ordinance that we were discussing, where a family may host a party and kids underage have access to alcohol. So again, going back to not just a retailer, but homes as well. So thank you
And-
for your work.
Oh, thank you very much. And we really, really want to see businesses succeed. And all kinds of businesses, not just the retail, alcohol retail outlets, but the surrounding businesses. And when a business doesn't meet those standards, it affects all their neighbors. And when they do have a higher standard, then it's good for all the community. And that's what we want to see. And you have some really good businesses here that really meet those standards. And the sheriff's department, I gotta applaud the sheriff's department for the work they do around the RBS, the Responsible Beverage Sales and Service. They do a great work. But we just gotta level the playing field, I think.
Mr. Spriggs, you had a question?
I want to thank my colleagues for their comments. I think they're really solid, and also stimulated a couple other quick questions. One is, does the South Bay Community Change Project or the Institute offer the kind of training of frontline staff, especially in the alcohol dispensing organizations that we could really use here and that Councilmember Bragg mentioned?
We actually work with the Sheriff's Department when they have the responsible retailer, the state trainings here for the responsible beverage sales and service. We help organize, we help register people. Yes, so we do participate in that, and we have other trainings we're more than happy to offer. And we have information on the conditional use permits and deemed approved ordinances. And we really want to work with the community members, and the industry to make it a safe industry for the community.
So would we have to sort of promote or catalyze this happening by having the deemed approval ordinance go into effect that might require this kind of training for each business? Or how do we get them to do this?
The city already requires the training.
Okay.
And the Sheriff's Department has, I think, 3 or 4 trainings a year. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's one coming up in October 3rd. Yeah, one of the trainings is going to be here in October 5th. That's close. And so you already are doing the trainings, and what the deemed approved does is it gives you those performance standards for those non-complying uses, and change them to deemed approved so you can put performance standards on them. So if they don't have good business practices, you can make them have the good business practices.
Okay. One last question. You mentioned during your presentation this process as an alternative funding source for general funds being used for enforcement or oversight or that sort of thing. Could you go over that again?
Yeah, if the city wanted to, they can include in the deemed approved ordinance a fee that goes to pay for the officer or the deputy that works with the alcohol industry in the city. That like Delori, where she runs the RSB, the Responsible Beverage Service training, she goes out and meets with businesses, and if there's enforcement needed, she takes care of that. But she really works at building a partnership so that that's not necessary. And within the approved ordinance, if the city wanted, they could have flew to a fee to help offset that salary, her salary, which would then free up the city's general fund monies that are being used for that now.
Okay, and that's in the ordinances?
Yes.
Yes. Great, thank you very much.
Thanks for that presentation. It's also good to see data and examples of concrete examples where things have worked. I really also just I think the youth alcohol sales was really tremendous, or the underage drinking arrest. To see that drop is really significant. And I know, like my colleagues, I want to make IB the safest, least crime-ridden city in the county. We need to beat Poway. So anything we can do to figure out a strategy to get there. Because, having been on the Sheriff's Community Advisory Board before I was elected, it was really interesting to see the role that alcohol plays in crime, especially in domestic abuse, which I think something I talked to the Consul of Mexico about today. They're really cognizant of the role that alcoholism plays in domestic abuse in the immigrant community. And so that's something they're working on as well, and been talking to sheriffs about that as well. So I thought it was interesting that came up today. But anyway, I guess I want to get some feedback from my colleagues about how we could move forward, any suggestions on how you'd like to see us move forward, just sort of identify what potential options. Do we want to ask the staff to meet with IPS and possibly the sheriffs to come up, look at a staff report, or just a sort of another general informational sort of options, things we could be thinking about? I'm not sure how you want to.
Well, I think that the sheriff, they have their own hotspots in our city. And I think if we figure out where those hotspots are, and if they happen to be around a place that sells liquor, I think that would be one of our first priorities. And maybe we'd start from there, maybe meet with the sheriff.
I think the deemed approved approach is something, because we have already a number of establishments. We're not going to have that many new ones. We just approved a new one the other night. And that would also come under the deemed approved. Um, I'd like to see us actually working with our city attorney, take a look at some of the better ordinances that we might be able to look at here and have a workshop or have a council meeting where we have a preliminary look at what we could actually do in Imperial Beach, because I think the deemed approved would apply across the board. I don't think we would be pinpointing specific outlets with that. To me, that would be a way we could really get at this and probably beat Poway once we put it into effect. It's probably just enough of an improvement in our crime situation by bringing these all up to a decent standard that we'll probably be number one. So I'm for being number one.
So maybe this is a question for our city manager and city attorney, because this could end up at some sort of ordinance. Is there a process that we need to embark on, even if we're just thinking, we're looking at options, like Councilmember Spriggs suggested, that we need, what would be like a sort of a legal next step, or, the way we could move forward is to evaluate ordinances and look at different options?
Yeah, the first step would be for us to prepare, excuse me, would be for us to prepare an ordinance for your review. We'd bring it forward to you for maybe a work session. At that point in time, we would move towards a first reading. And then there would be, another opportunity for the public to comment. And then there would be a second reading of the ordinance, and then it would take effect 30 days after that. So there would be a lot of time in that process for different businesses to come in, provide input, let you know what they thought worked in the ordinance, what didn't. We've had a chance to meet with Mr. Preuss and his staff several times. And so we understand that a lot of the foundation that they have already prepared will allow us to move through this process relatively quickly. There have been other ordinances that have been tested in the courts and whatnot. So that's a little bit comforting when you're dealing with things like land use. You want to make sure that there's a good legal foundation for this deemed approved ordinance, and it sounds like that's the case.
So again, the next step would be to have possibly a staff report identifying different, not just one ordinance, but possibly different
options.
Right.
That's
okay.
correct.
All right.
And
And
if
then look at
that's,
other examples from other cities, maybe have some additional data from the sheriffs to identify. So we have some data to back that up. Is that something we could do?
you bet, without dissent, we'll get started on that and bring it to you just as quickly as we can put some options together.
Any dissent on that? Or?
No dissent, but I do have a comment. And I do hope that there is plenty of time for our business community to weigh in on this, Chamber of Commerce as well. Other communities, out in El Cajon, that business community, I'm sure that there may have been a little bit of pushback from that, from some of the businesses. There always is, especially with fees involved. We're talking about an ordinance here, so for me to make a decision like that, I'm going to need a lot of data from the sheriff's department, data from the ABC. I want to know that in fact there is a problem, and how bad is that problem. Obviously, the numbers you had were from El Cajon. I'm sure the numbers in Imperial Beach are going to be different, hopefully to the better. As far as what happens in Poway, that's Poway. I worry about Imperial Beach. So like I said, I do want to have an opportunity for our business community to make sure that we're not putting something that's so onerous on them. And I know many of those business owners, having been here for a while, and if we can develop a tool that can help them develop their staff, because a lot of this is staff development. And like I said, if we can, and I had said earlier, if we can develop those staff members to become better salespeople, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Is there a confidentiality or business sensitivity issue here? Because one of our council members mentioned hotspots that the sheriff's department may be aware of, where there are more problems than on average in Imperial Beach around liquor outlets. And that's really what I had in mind when I'm talking about putting that together with raising the bar means no doubt probably eliminating some of the criminal activity or illegal activity or domestic relations problems that may emanate from those hotspots. And so I also don't care about Poway. I care about Imperial Beach, but it's looking at it from that standpoint of covering those difficult areas by an ordinance that raises the bar for everybody that I'm interested in. And without, I would imagine that the businesses that are in compliance, which are the vast majority, are probably not going to have a big problem with this because the standards will be set at a level that they're already at. But I would welcome the entire business community that's involved in this issue coming in and hearing from them, pro and con and all that. It would be a very good hearing for us, I'm sure. So in getting a report that includes sheriff's information on quantifying where some of the problem areas are in Imperial Beach, is that something that we would want to have a private, that we would want to have on record because it may be seen as, you know, I don't know, hostile towards certain of the businesses in the community or whatever. I'm not sure how we would get at the point that my colleague is talking about of identifying the hot spots, setting the justification for moving forward with a deemed approved ordinance that would cover those situations. So it's kind of a process question in terms of how we would proceed to have a review of that kind of information, and whether that would be something that we'd have to either mute if it was going to be in the public forum and not mention any names, or have a closed session on so that we would be able to digest those facts, or whatever. I'm not sure, because I'd like to see the full and complete data on what's going on in our community and not have it sort of glossed over because we don't want to embarrass anybody.
Along with that, if I may, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, you did bring up a good point too about discussing domestic violence and some of that stemming from alcohol abuse. We do have a representative from the Navy here, and I know they take that very seriously as well. So including them in this discussion, I think would make would really help us to further this cause, because I know in my discussions with the Navy before, that was something that they are really concerned with, is alcohol abuse among their ranks. And again, you know, the domestic violence issues that may follow.
So I guess there's a process question about this legality and whether that crime statistics are public, you know, subject to public disclosure. Or...
Sure. I think, well, I think the idea is going to be to look at the types of crimes as a whole that relate to alcohol. Any ordinance is going to be applicable to all. For instance, the alcohol ordinance deals with off-sale alcohol outlets, so it'd be all of them. But I think in gathering information into whether
I'm sorry, off-site.
Off-site, yeah. So
those are
liquor stores,
right,
as opposed to on-sale establishments of alcohol.
Right, okay.
So I think the idea would be in gathering information to decide whether this kind of ordinance is right for your city. We would probably be looking at a broad spectrum, not looking at individual areas necessarily that you're going to target those areas. When and if this kind of ordinance gets approved, the idea is that if there is a business that's out of compliance, you have to hold various public hearings to find them out of compliance and take away their rights. And at that time, those businesses will be in the public sector because you'll have public hearings related to those specific businesses. But I think talking to the city of El Cajon is going to be key. Our office represents the city of El Cajon, and so we were involved and did draft the ordinance and did defend it because the local business owners did challenge it and sue over it. So the city of El Cajon had an extensive discussion with business owners before they adopted it, and then they were sued after they adopted it. The court upheld the ordinance, but there is going to be an extensive amount of outreach, I think, with the business owners in Imperial Beach related to what, you know, could go on down the road.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I think we're hearing some reoccurring themes that we want to be cognizant of and make sure that we take into consideration. I'm hearing that we really want to get involved with the businesses and make sure that we involve them in this process. Chamber of Commerce, those other business community organizations that allow us to have this discussion with them. And then on the other side of that, what I'm hearing is that there are certain types of alcohol sales that we want to be careful with. The low cost, high alcohol content the single sales of malt liquor or the airplane bottles or some of those kinds of things. And so, certainly what we want to do is talk with our businesses and say, we're not at all against the legal sale of alcohol to people who can, drink alcohol responsibly and maybe do some training about who we're selling it to, what we're selling, how affordable it is, what the access is, some of those kinds of things. So I think when you're talking about specific hotspot locations, I think what will be important is what kind of alcohol is showing up in those hotspots. Is it the cheaper single cell malt liquor? Is it the, maybe the airplane bottles and some of those kinds of things, and really go after the types of delivery of alcohol rather than the individual businesses that may be selling it. That's something we can already do. But really, what is being abused and what's causing that abuse, and there's some things we can do to cut down on some of the crime.
Okay, so I think we're still talking about an informational staff report with different options, identifying possibly some of the legal strategies. It sounds like in El Cajon, it was off-site stores they were focused on. Maybe I'm wrong. Is it my understanding, though, that the Neighborhood Market Association came around and now supports that ordinance? Is that something I had heard? I wasn't sure. I'd follow up on that. It was the NMA that had filed that lawsuit. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
initially they opposed it, and they're the ones that filed the lawsuit
Right.
that was mentioned. The last article they wrote was in support of it.
Right. Okay.
They see the benefits to
And-
their business members.
And again, given, that we do have a robust data collection system done by the sheriffs on crime statistics, I'm sure we can provide some data, especially related to sort of in comparison to like what they did in El Cajon or something. So we have a baseline of information. So, okay. And then I think we're talking about legal strategies possibly, but then potentially also other informational educational strategies for liquor license owners and then their employees. So good.
And at one time, there was the city of Imperial Beach that received grants
Right.
for this, and
Right.
you
So
and I
something-
had talked about that
It
before
was,
too.
and it was you guys as well, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. All right. I think we've been clear on that. Is-
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I
Good.
think staff
Okay.
has direction.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that informational presentation. We look forward to working with you.
And I apologize, I have to leave. I live
Nope, that's fine. Thank you. Now we move on. Thank you. We move on to the consent calendar, items 2.1 and 2.5. I would like to entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 to 2.5. Please vote. Great. Now we have.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Now we have report 5.1, adoption of resolution number 2016-7731, appropriating funds and authorizing payment of $224,300 for the city of Imperial Beach share of the next gen regional communication system for the replacement of an 800 megahertz public safety communication system. Fire Chief French will give a presentation on the item.
All right, Honorable Mayor, City Council. I'm here tonight to just give you a little background history and a little information on the regional communication system. Imperial Beach has been a part of the regional communication system since about 1995, and the system's a little bit older than that. So the system has been around for over 20 years, and it's getting kind of old. It's getting kind of outdated with the technology nowadays. So over the last couple of years, the RCS board has been looking at ways to improve the system. So they're going towards the next generation system. In February of 2014, we came to the city council and got approval for the funding of our portion of the regional communication system. At that time, they were looking at our portion being around 800,000. So with the city's approval at that time, and the city staff, we looked at ways of funding it. And at that time, with the council's approval, we looked at reserves, we looked at ways where we could fund it without having to finance it. Some cities are financing it at 6 or 7%, and our city has foregone that conclusion and is paying it through our general fund reserve, which is awesome. So we don't have that extra money to pay. The good news is through the contracts with the RCS board, Our cost is now only going to be 524,000. So, you know, we've put aside more money than that, which is great, but it's not going to cost us that much. So if you have any questions or
Any
comments
questions,
on that?
comments? You have a question? Yeah, Mr. Briggs.
Chief, thank you very much for that succinct report. The question I have is, I guess the question I asked 2 years ago when we approved this before, and that's it. To a layperson, it seems like an awful lot of money. You would think that 800,000 or $500,000 would be enough for a regional communication system all by itself, and that's just Imperial Beach's portion. So I can only imagine. Well, there is the total amount is
About 70 million.
right. Just for my benefit and the public, what is it possible for you to describe why it's so expensive and what's involved in it to create this kind of a huge expense?
Well, I think a lot of the huge expense that is associated with this is that every fire, police, lifeguard agency, and a lot of other, you know, public safety agencies are all part of this system. So it's a huge system of communication. So in times like when we have like the Cedar fires or huge fires like that, where fire, police, lifeguards are communicating on a bigger scale, to have a system that is this robust and with new technology is great. You know, 800 system has, you know, has been something that has been around in like our city departments. If you go to like Cal Fire, they're still using the old technology, the old VHF system. So, and that's supposed to be our backup. And if our system was to fail and go back to that VHF system, which we've tried to do on some of the wildfires, and if we go out to on strike teams and that, we switch over to that VHF system, and the technology just isn't there. So with this 800 system and making it more robust with all the technology now, so all our it's the next generation of this system. So with everything being outdated right now, having such a system and the money just associated with it.
So one of the things you alluded to was the ability for all the public safety agencies to communicate with each other.
Yes.
I remember an old word for that was interoperability or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that what this new system provides, so that it doesn't really matter which public serve, whether it's fire, whether it's sheriff, whether it's police, et cetera, that there is the ability to communicate in an emergency across those boundaries?
Yes, sir.
That's what this does.
Yeah, I mean, we have that technology right now, but just with the way technology has advanced, that the system is just getting old and outdated and just can't handle the magnitude of, you know, just all the resources that are using it.
Well, and Mayor and Council, you know, one of the important things about this system is, to quote a Tom Hanks movie, or I guess it's a Ron Howard movie, failure is not an option. So there's a lot of redundancy in the system. So you end up paying a little bit more, but you have to have that redundancy. You can't dial 911 and have it fail. We need people on the other end of the line. The other thing that I just want to reiterate and commend this city council for the approach on this, which is to make sure that we're putting money aside and doing this properly, just paying the cash price for it, which is the 524, instead of financing it. So that we are paying the actual cost and we're not getting into interest costs and some of those kinds of things. Those are tough decisions for city councils to make. That money can be spent a lot of different ways. Really want to commend the council for the foresight of a couple of years ago, putting this money aside so that we could pay for this in cash. Very smart decision. So.
I guess my final sort of concern or question is, thank goodness, we've never really had a huge disaster in the whole area. Like a tsunami or a huge earthquake or something like that. I assume that this system upgrade is going to enable more fail-safe communication in that kind of a huge, kind of large-scale disaster scenario. It's going to actually improve the ability of public safety agencies to deal with it, with redundancies, et cetera, so that if stuff goes down, cell systems go down, et cetera, that this is going to continue to operate.
Yes, it will. And that's what they're looking at is the redundancy, and that's the important part. So they have the fail-safe system. So if one part of it goes down, they can pick it up in another way through different communication. You have that same system.
Mr. Patton.
Yeah, thank you. Let me talk money first. So in 2013, we had 272,000 put away, right? And have we put 100,000 each year? Or basically, how much do we have right now for this?
We have $800,000 put away in an account for this. And so there will be some money that we will come back to you to reappropriate to another location.
Okay, that's good news. So we have all the money.
Correct. That is
Excellent.
correct.
Excellent. And I've used these radios as a lifeguard, and the 800 megahertz, and I'm sure the mayor has too.
Actually, I retired from IB well before we had decent
Well,
communication
the
system.
lifeguards have them. Do you have your radio on you?
No, I don't.
Sorry. No, but he has his pager.
Yeah. Pager or cell phone.
Yeah, he has, he's loaded with technology there. But as a lifeguard, I know if I wanted to talk to city lifeguards, I turn it one knob. I want to talk to the Coast Guard helicopter flying over, I switch a knob. I want to talk to the Border Patrol. And it's all about mutual aid, about the different organizations working together for, say, a tsunami and one cause. And it's not just for the radios, it's for the cell towers that go across the mountains and whatnot, and the infrastructure, right? I mean, that's what we're looking at. And true, $800,000 sounds like this crazy amount, but I'm definitely for this. One thing I didn't see, there's like 60 pages of in our documents, and I started to go through it, but it's just overwhelming. Is there an annual fee or any maintenance fees that we're going to be maybe, I don't know who to answer that on this?
We are assessed a fee every year for each radio we have in service. So whatever radios the lifeguard service has, whatever we have, we're assessed a fee that we pay. So, and that,
Yeah, and that's the case now as well. And that makes sure that we are able to secure that bandwidth. There's an area of the bandwidth, and you're way over my head when we're talking about this, that is secured for public safety, so that other people can't get into it. It is more encrypted, so that they can have conversations that people can't hear and whatnot. And so we have to secure that bandwidth, and that's an annual fee, an annual cost.
And I guess my final question, and Captain Staminow could just nod his head if he wants some. How are you guys doing on radios? Do you have exactly what you need right now?
I think we're doing real good right now. They're switching to the next generation. So that's what we're progressing towards. And we just might be a couple short on that, but we'll have them.
Captain, Sheriff, good? Okay, great. So mutual aid right here. Thank you very much.
So just a comment, I think was the Cedar Fire, there were two fires, 2002 or 2004?
2003 and 2007.
Yeah, they were pretty catastrophic. In fact, we had fires just east of here. So, and then I'm assuming they're using that communication device up in San Bernardino. That system is now to communicate with each other.
Yes, they are.
Right. And so, and then I'm assuming that folks in Louisiana, public safety agencies have this type of system so they communicate with each other. Maybe we can't assume that about Louisiana.
I know we can communicate with pretty much anybody in the state of California.
But I mean,
800,
most places have these types of systems, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think with the issue of climate change and even coastal flooding, I was thinking about coastal flooding and all the departments working together was, sheriffs, lifeguards, the fire department, public works, et cetera. I mean, being able to communicate, and everyone was in different parts of the city dealing with some of the flooding, I'm assuming even that type of stuff is important. But the fact that you guys are able to go up and coordinate with fire departments from all over the state, in San Bernardino, where 80,000 people have been evacuated, is really important. So I'm a big believer in this. I know it's expensive, but it's expensive to be cheap. And when I was a lifeguard, we used to communicate with our sanitation workers. So that was the only frequency that we shared. So
mayor, our radios were in a wooden box with a car battery
Right.
and with a radio attached to the outside of
We
it.
hoisted it up on the lifeguard tower with a rope
Things have changed.
that I had to throw a ladder up and climb the lifeguard tower. So, yeah, we're really glad that we're progressing as a city. and
guys
we
are
have
old.
modern tools. So, anyway.
You
I was
guys
gonna make that comment, but I didn't.
I can't. You can't. I had a comment, if
Yeah.
I may, Mayor. Chief, what's the shelf life of this system, and when would we be looking at replacing this system?
You know, I really couldn't answer that question. I haven't seen what they plan to be the shelf life of this system, so I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
So we start saving now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my point. Start saving now. And I remember when we had to make this decision, to budget for $800,000, and your predecessors coming before us and telling us, okay, and really there is no choice. It was something we had to do. That this did come in less than what we had budgeted for was great. The real story, I think part of the other story is, the wisdom in being able to pay for this out front without having to finance it, as we know other cities very close to us are having to do. So I think there is some congratulations in order for ourselves for always being frugal, always being mindful of our budget, and being good stewards of the community's money. And the being able to talk to, like you said, the rest of the state. When the Poinsettia fire happened, that was in my son's backyard. When that fire just raced up the canyon in his backyard in Carlsbad. So of course, and I happen to call you frequently, like on Sunday mornings sometimes, but I always appreciate that we do have, the systems in place that we need to protect our citizens. So thank you for the report.
Thank you.
We'll move forward. This is just a comment. Just because we're a small city doesn't mean we have to be a city that does things in a small way. I think it's really important that we're a city that's really dedicated to quality and doing things in a first class, the highest professional standards. And I see that with our public safety agencies and now with our city staff. And it's something I think is really important. I love watching our public safety agencies, from the sheriffs to firefighters and lifeguards, and our public safety staff really focusing on doing high quality, high performance, meeting the highest standards, and doing really, really outstanding work. And I think that's something that you have to pay for and invest in not only in the equipment, but the training. And at the end of the day, and those, I know Mr. Patton, I know, has lifeguards, you never expect an emergency to happen. You never know when it's going to happen. When it does, you're really glad you have the right equipment and great staff to actually deal with it. So anyway.
Mayor, if I could make one more comment. I also want to compliment our residents. The mayor and I had a chance to go to the funeral of the fallen officer a couple of weeks ago. On the way back, people were stopped on the freeway, lining the freeway, showing their respect for the cars going by. And when you see what's happening in other communities, it's really great what's happening here in the city and county of San Diego for the support that we have for public safety. And we really appreciate what they do. They put their lives on the line for us. There was no picketing or anything. It was really a demonstration of support for our public safety. And it was really moving to see. It was really, really fantastic. So our residents in the county and Imperial Beach need to be commended as well for taking it seriously.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion with that to adopt resolution number 2016-7731, appropriating funds and authorizing payment of $524,300.64 for the city of Imperial Beach share of the next gen regional communication system for the replacement of 800 megahertz public safety communication systems. Is there a motion?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Great. With that, the meeting's adjourned. Thanks everybody for coming out. Appreciate it.